there is a huge gulf between the print industry and the creative industry, and I simply don't know why. Well, I can only assume it's because they see the print industry as old-fashioned, and the print industry thinks that the creative industries won't understand them, so they don't have the conversation. And in the middle sits people like us. There needs to be a way, and we've sort of tried it over the years, and it's sort of worked a little bit, but you get the wrong people that come and try and represent the creative agencies. I simply don't think they have the first idea of what's possible. They just think they do because they're creative.
Welcome to Print is Back, the creative print-related podcast. I'm Jacques Michiels.
And I'm Andreas Weber.
We are your hosts. Welcome.
So, Richard, to just jump straight into it, you were pioneering in personalization when the Coca-Cola Share a Coke campaign came on. We are seeing it again now in supermarkets. So when Andreas and I were talking about the fact that print is exciting again, and if executed correctly, that is. Your name straight away popped up, and we said, "Hey, why not have a little chat with Richard?" Do you think that it's a good idea that Coca-Cola came with that same campaign, or should they have done something different this time?
I mean, I've kind of got a mixed view on it, really, Jacques, because in some ways, when I saw it was coming out again, I looked into what they were doing, expecting an evolution in the notion of the campaign, and maybe a little bit more technologically led and what have you. And what I found, of course, was kind of the same campaign done again. But it very quickly dawned on me that it was being done again for an entirely new generation. And when I cast my mind back to the original meetings that I had with Coca-Cola in 2013, their whole reason for the original campaign was not to sell more Coca-Cola. It was to engage with an audience, a generation that were in danger of leaving their product behind. They saw a statistic that 1 in 3 teenagers no longer drank soft drinks, fizzy drinks. And they were terrified because they could see their business model sliding out of view. And you know what it's like. We've all been there when a generation decides to do something different. They all do. You don't keep your audience. So in many ways, it makes sense because the same problem exists, right? It makes sense to repeat the campaign to a whole new generation, but using today's tools. And I said before we started recording that this for me is the TikTok Share a Coke. Because it didn't exist. TikTok didn't exist 12 years ago. I think we used to write each other letters, didn't we? 12 years ago. But at that time, the most technically advanced thing about that campaign was that you could go online, type your name in, we would print a label, put it on a bottle, and send it to you. Now that feels like prehistoric now when you consider the way that technology has moved and the speed that it has. So yeah, for me, Jacques, the difference this time: same campaign, new generation, different communication tools. Let's see if it has the same impact.
And I think that the production is today much more easier than 12 years ago because there was a certain challenge that via HP Indigo technology you have to imitate exactly the quality of flexo printing and the production capacity was not that high like today. So is that a factor that is important today, or do you think it doesn't matter?
I think it's a consequential benefit, Andreas, of where the print industry now is, in its own development cycle. Again, measuring this back 12 years ago, it felt a bit piecemeal, felt a bit analog. Even though it was digital print, it felt like analog behavior. At the time, and Coca-Cola, in their wisdom, selected different partners around Europe to do the different elements of it, and we were the aggregator, and everything that was produced, including the bottles. I'll tell you a funny story about that in a second. The bottles, the labels, the packaging, everything came from various places into the UK, into me, and then we aggregated it, applied the labels, and then sent it back out again to where it came from. The funny story, and you talk about logistics, is Coca-Cola only had to do one thing. They had to supply us with bottles, the glass bottles, the famous glass bottles of Coca-Cola, with no front labels on, so that we could simply apply the personalized labels to it and ship them out. So the first lorry arrived a week before the campaign launched. It was a bit like the Christmas ad, the holidays are coming, and the lorries are arriving. And like, yeah, the lorry's there, and we opened the side of the lorry up, and it was they've all got front labels on, and so they had one. They had one job, but we sorted it and we solved it. But today, I think what you will hopefully see, and I don't know this for a fact, but one would hope is that that's a bit more integrated than it was 12 years ago, and the degree of technical sophistication that the print industry has at its disposal and should talk about more frequently, I should add, is an absolute boon to a brand like Coca-Cola, because there's a turnkey solution there for them to do campaigns like that, and that simply wasn't there 12 years ago.
That's very funny that the truck came with the labels on. Richard, I mean, you help many businesses, understand the value of personalization in print. You're also you were like a TEDx talker. You're also an ambassador for FESPA. We just had FESPA Berlin. So we talked last week to a couple of guys from Brazil who were there. So also on the topic of the evolution, let's say, of FESPA, and you're heavily involved with everything to do with personalization for FESPA as an ambassador. But we don't only want to talk about Coca-Cola, of course. We want to know a little bit about your ideas and how do you see the trends coming about? Because more and more we see and we hear, and you just explained that like the kids that are 18 now, or the youngsters that are 18 now, they were 6 when that campaign came out. And I can feel and I hear a lot that the youth is more interested now maybe than before in print. They don't see it as much as a commodity product anymore when it's well executed, and when it's you have all that tactile and sensory appeal of printed materials. So what is your actual idea today concerning that topic of personalization in print?
It's quite interesting, and I'll take you back in time just to explain the context for my answer, because when I first got into personalization in the wine business, which is where I spent most of my early working life, it was to add value back in to a product. The product itself was being commoditized by major retailers, and wine had lost its value to a certain extent. Once it becomes a standard product in most people's lives, the luxury value that existed previously disappeared, and it became a race to the bottom on price, not dissimilar to commoditized print. So by the addition of personalized labels, customized labels, branded labels back into the wine business was where I learned what personalization is for. If you fast forward that to today, Jacques, and again, I go back to this new generation. We have a generation, and my daughter is 17, so I speak from experience, and what they like to see as a generation is their brand, their name, their tag, their hashtag, whatever their thing is. They can now create their own content that they can see themselves aligned with some of the major brands, the Nikes of this world, the Adidas of this world, create their own sneakers, create their own brand. And for them, print doesn't carry the same sort of legacy opinion that it does for people of our age, because we kind of come from a world where we knew what print was for. We now see what it is, but the conversation always goes on, doesn't it? Is print dead? It depends, really, on what you see it as. The youth of today, he says, sounding like an old fart, see it as content. And in many ways, I would rebrand print as content, because then you are appealing to a whole generation of content creators, the Instagrammers of this world, the social media influencers that are using print on a daily basis and creating their own brands and co-branding themselves with others. And they see it entirely differently. Our lens is, way back when, and newspapers almost. I mean, I had a meeting last year at FESPA with one of the guys from Ogilvy, biggest advertising agency in the world. And they said, when we talk about print in our office, people go, "Oh, do you mean newspapers?" I was like, no, it's everything else, that you touch on every day has been printed. And it was their line, their argument. Well, if you called it content, then we'd get involved. So I think in many ways, the print industry has redefined itself and totally technologically advanced to the point now where actually you can argue it's the tech industry. It just doesn't know it. But it still talks about itself in terminology that goes back to almost prove the lie, if you know what I mean. So I think the generation of today are seeing print for what they want it to be, not what they thought it was.
So you think you can bring that back to semantics then? Is it just like a different approach or, to what it is actually?
Yeah, well, most things can be brought back to semantics if you really drill down into the argument, and it's only the generational shift in the way that we use the terminology that creates the image, if you like. So, I think we're quite lucky, in our roles within the industry. And I know I'm lucky, Jacques, because I've never printed a thing in my life. So I spend my time commentating on things, but I look at it from what you could have done with this, rather than what you are doing with this. I've said many times from stage that if the first phone call that you receive from a customer is, how much can you do this for? You should put the phone down, because it shouldn't be a conversation about price. Now, that's a lovely notion, isn't it? And I realise that there'll be PSPs all over the world going, well, it's all right for you, Rich, I'm going to sell it. And that's fine. But you shouldn't have to sell stuff. If it's that good, people will buy it. And I think that's the big shift now. And in many ways, that generation of teenagers today are the best salesmen that the print industry have ever had.
I think you strike a good point there, Richard, because as you say, and we had many discussions with many of our friends, also the guys from Inkish, and we all study like business cases and so forth. But like you just said, I think that's absolutely correct. I mean, to grasp the value or the higher value that print can bring into a project, rather than just to look at it as a cost, as a fractional cost as per piece or something. I think that's a totally different conversation, and I think you as well, and with all your experience and all the media projects that you did, I mean, you probably have these discussions every time when you have to bring up the product of print in the equation of how one should go about with marketing some kind of product. So in that regard, do you have any new projects that are going? Because in the personalization space, I know you have your own, your own products that you put in the market some time ago. You have the Starbucks, if I'm not mistaken, and the ball picks. You once told me about. It's all to do within the sports. The sports area. So what are you personally doing at this time with personalized products?
You mentioned the book business there, and that's a good way of describing the evolution of personalization as far as I'm concerned, because I think in many ways your name is the least personal thing about you. It's the thing that everybody knows or can find out if they wish. And so therefore just slapping your name on something, sticking your name on a bar of chocolate or a bottle of Coke is the least personalized thing you can do. But you see my point, and I've learned over the years, Jacques, by sort of talking to people, interviewing people, hosting stages, listening really to what people actually want from their personalized products, and then in my head either working with the brand to develop it or working with myself to develop it, as a product in and of itself. And the footballs was a great example, because we were approached. I'd given a speech somewhere about personalization, and I was approached by Carlsberg. Other beers are available to do personalized footballs for a tournament, big Euro summer tournament. And I thought it'd be really easy, and it turned out that it wasn't. And because they print everything when the leather is still flat, and then they made the ball. Well, we were being asked to print when the ball has already been made. And so it took about 2 years, but we worked it out. And I couldn't find anybody that could do it. So I set up a company called Ball Picks to do it. And we now export footballs to 65 countries around the world. So it's sometimes the difficulty, the threshold of can you actually make this product is the difference between a good idea and a product. And that's the entrepreneurial bit, isn't it? In between there is the risk. Is it worth the risk for the size of the opportunity? And I was brought up that way to enjoy the risk. My father was very much a sort of guy that would jump off a cliff and build a plane on the way down. So he was one of those. And I've sort of grown up that way. So I look for these things and either look to work with companies to develop them, or if they don't wish to develop them myself. The books that you mentioned, which are personalised children's books, all licensed with sporting organisations around the world to grow the game, to improve child literacy, diversity, inclusivity. Everybody's brand values are serviced by these books. But what's quite interesting is the children's reaction to being able to make an avatar of the way that they see themselves, not how we see them, not how choose from a drop down of lookalike illustrations, but actually, if that child wants a purple head and a Mohican and 3 ears, that's fine. That's what they want to be. We should let them. And this goes back to my point. Personalization is what you want it to be, not what somebody else lets you choose from. Otherwise, it's not personalized, customized. And therein lies the huge difference.
Yeah, I totally agree, because my experience is we have 3 different dimensions of personalization or customization. First of all is I was slightly almost irritated in the very early phase of personalization when they sent me a personalized printed piece using my name. I didn't allow them to use my name, and they explained to myself that I'm Andreas Weber. I know it already. So I thought it's totally stupid, yeah. The next step was when I saw what was going on with social media and creating a printed piece, which I personally can personalize and could put my name on it, maybe a photo book, and send it to my grandma. That was wonderful. And the next thing was, and I used that as I was a magazine publisher. I published a media production magazine with 20,000 copies 15 years ago, and we personalized the whole edition of that magazine. And our reader, the person who received the magazine, was the interviewer and asking the interviews in we got thousands of calls, and it was crazy because they said, "Wow, do everybody now see that I'm doing interviews? No, it's only you." So this was really a aha effect. So it was amazing. And what do you think? Are we doing much better in using the real value of personalization, or is it? I don't know.
I think we're along the journey. I don't think we're fully utilising it yet, because I don't think people fully understand what it's for. And it really is to enhance an emotional connection between two people, and whether that person is a brand and a customer, or a grandparent and a grandchild, or whatever it is, it's a human response to an emotional element, which is called thought. And we've always said, how many times have we heard it over the years? It's the thought that counts. But that thought has to be thoughtful. It can't be somebody else's thought that you steal and use and deploy it. It needs to be something that means something to the two people in that interaction. So, for example, Jacques, if I wanted to get you a gift that I knew you would know that it was truly personal, I would think of conversations that we've had maybe at a dinner somewhere, and we've joked about something, and we've said, "Do you remember that time when we were in that pizza place?" and it's that's the personal piece.
Don't make that public. Don't make
no, don't. But you know what I mean, and that's that personal piece that we treasure and value highly above any cost. Is the thought piece that goes into it. So for me, Andreas, to answer your question, I don't think anybody has truly unlocked the true value of personalization yet, because we're still a little bit stuck on, I can put your name on something. And it's novelty, and that's great. And trust me, I've made a career out of it, so I'm not knocking it. But in principle, I think it's a little handwritten note that is just in your locker at the tennis club, and you go, "Good luck today," and you think, well, that means something. We're actually very simple creatures emotionally. We like to be seen. We like to be noticed. And I think if a brand can truly, or a product can truly encapsulate that feeling, that's where the value sits.
That means there is a huge creative potential. So do we have to talk more to creative through the creative communities and also to creative agencies? You mentioned Ogilvy. I worked a lot with BBDO and then all those service plan in Germany, which is the biggest agency in Europe. We did a lot of work, and the interesting point was always that they said, oh, we are fascinated about what is possible on the technological side, but when they were asking for who are the good service provider delivering that service, you know, it was a shame, because then I had to ask all those OEMs like HP, Heidelberg and whoever, and they were not able to deliver directories to specify who could do what is technically possible. Crazy.
Well, as you both know very well, there is a huge gulf between the print industry and the creative industry, and I simply don't know why. And I can only assume. Well, I can only assume it's because they see the print industry as old-fashioned, and the print industry thinks that the creative industries won't understand them, so they don't have the conversation. And in the middle sits people like us, trying to organise, you know, it's like being speed dating, isn't it? You know, you need to have, there needs to be a way. And we've sort of tried it over the years, and it's sort of worked a little bit, but you get the wrong people that come and try and represent the creative agencies. I simply don't think they have the first idea of what's possible. They just think they do because they're creative. So they must be right, because look at me, I work for Ogilvy. And you know, I sit there on the sidelines thinking, well, then fine, miss out, you know, and the small brands or the small companies will do something really creative, you know, that in a small way, and nobody will notice, and it won't become a big thing. You know, if the limit of our imagination, Andreas, is to stick your name on a label and stick it on a bottle, then we've largely failed as a print industry of being able to display what's possible. And even though, and I know it happens because I've been in the meetings, this year, we're going to invite all the creative industries to come to our show in Berlin or Amsterdam or Las Vegas or wherever. Do they come? Oh. Yeah. So so that's the solution. It's not a lack of ability, and it's not a lack of ideas. It's a lack of communication, and that's never not true.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head right there, Richard, because as Andreas knows as well, that's a little bit. I wouldn't say like a goal that we set out for ourselves, for Andreas and I, and you as well, Richard. I know you were also an advocate for that topic. So we would really like to get more to those creatives, to those agencies, to, let's say, the other players in the printing industry that are involved, that create campaigns and stuff, and that are that aren't aware of all the possibilities there are in the market and in the marketplace.
There is a simple solution. Sorry to interrupt. There is a simple solution, of course, but I just don't think the OEMs are brave enough to take it on. The major manufacturers that we all know and love. Why don't they set their own creative agencies up? Why do they have to wait for an external agency to understand? Why don't they just hire people, create HP Create or Xerox Create or what, you know? And I said this years ago, Jacques. I stood on the stage in Barcelona at the HP Demo Center, and I was talking to the rock and roll crowd that is the corrugated packaging industry. And I said, why don't you just disrupt yourselves? Instead of worrying about being disrupted, why don't you set up a unit inside your own business that disrupts yourself? Then at the very least, if it works, you're not going to suffer from it because you own it. Well, the same is true creatively, isn't it? That why have an organization that's sitting over here waiting for a creative agency to understand? Or buy one, and do it the lazy way, and use some of those, excess millions of dollars that I'm sure they've got lying around, because I'm sure that's how it works. To just buy the talent, they've invested so heavily in the print talent, and they haven't invested at all in the creative brand side of this, and the gulf in between. You heard me do this speech a few times, I think, called The Adventures on Print Island. And the notion was that the entire print industry lives on an island. It just doesn't know it. So there's a whole heap of other islands and the mainland over here that never left the island. So for me, I would be, if I was an HP or a Xerox or a Fuji or whoever, if my biggest problem was talking to creative agencies, I'd stop trying and build one and let that be the solution. But that's just the way my brain works.
Totally,
I think you're right, because it's like creating a think tank within.
Correct.
Now, I know there are some that operate that in their own operations, but yeah, they just don't come to fruition, and that's a big problem. But maybe, who knows? Maybe the AI come in at some point and try to loosen up that situation. What's your take on the AI situation, Richard?
Yeah, well, I just see it as another tool in the same way that Google was 25 years ago, and in the same way that cars were when we all used to ride horses. It's just another evolution in the business cycle, that another tool has entered the toolkit. It's not a replacement; it's an enhancement. I don't believe all the horror stories about it's going to take everybody's jobs, but a bit like the internet didn't take anybody's jobs; it just took the jobs of the people that weren't interested in learning about it. That's the fact, unfortunately. So AI for me is a brilliant tool to be used in whatever way suits your business the best, whether that's time saving or creativity. It doesn't really matter. But it isn't a catch-all, of course, because yes, it's an artificial intelligence, but it starts with a prompt. Somebody has to give it an idea for it to benefit from. But that's no different to a creative director, is it? Mm-hmm. In that regard. So yeah, I'm a bit more pragmatic, Jacques. I think with AI, I like it. We're using it in our book business, to create the imagery of the stadiums where the little boy is scoring the winning goal or the little girl is saving the winning penalty or whatever the storyline is, because the children create their own stories in our books. AI has been a huge benefit to us in that regard. And of course, it's not new. Let's not forget, it's been around since the 1950s. AI is just, we haven't seen it that way. Generative AI is the new bit. And what do? We all make pictures of ourselves as dolls. That's the limit of our imagination.
Yeah, well, I haven't done mine yet, and I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, me neither, and I'm not going to do it.
Right. Well, maybe as one of our topics of today, is print is not dead. It's a strange slogan, but as our podcast is called, Print is Back. And we want to spread a little bit of that positive news, and also to open up that creative minds that can accomplish some fantastic printing. How do you stand on the fact that also the more and more you see it on all the trade fairs and stuff, the tactile and the sensory elements on print nowadays? How do you see that? Is that something that you also hear, that, let's say, the new buyers, they all want that now, just to make it the difference with like we said, like the commodity?
Yeah, no, definitely, and trade shows, I think, are evolving rather interestingly, because not necessarily at speed. Because I think when you go to any trade show at the moment, you could be at any trade show at the moment, and that's always quite tricky, for the event organisers, because there's two businesses here, isn't there? There's the event organising business and there's the print business, and the two things are not necessarily the same thing. So in many ways, the event organisers are going to sell space to anybody that wants to buy it, because they need to make money, and that's fine. And the print industry finds itself sharing space with people that it doesn't necessarily know or recognise, but can see the benefit of sharing that space with. So to a certain extent, you could argue that the event organisers are driving the evolution of the print industry and therefore the customer experience, just because of commercial necessity in many ways. I still don't believe particularly that we need quite as many trade shows as we do, and I notice quite a few now are amalgamating between the two models, if you like. For me, it's about the experience for the visitor and the buyer, and hopefully the young people as well, that it encourages to visit the next generation, if you like. Because I guarantee you, Jacques, it would be so much easier to get the next generation involved if they thought it was the tech industry. Right. So anything that they can see and we buy with our eyes, right? We're very good like that as human beings. If we see something, if we touch something, it's a very sensory sort of process. So I think when you see these things on display, not just the big machine, oh look, we can print paper quicker than you can, and nobody really cares about that. I think people come in and say, oh, that's interesting. What's that made of? You printed that, and that discovery of everything that we're evolving towards in terms of product capability is the interest point. You go away from that trade show going, I'm going to look into that. Nobody goes away from a trade show saying, I found something that prints 3 sheets quicker per hour. That's, and if they do, we should throw them in the river.
Yeah, so as you said, it's all about the ideas to go and see. That's also something that our good friends Hamilton Costa last week told us that that people are really looking for new ideas, a new product experience, like you said, and personalization is of course one of the drivers that can bring that to the table. But maybe on my behalf, one more question. Everybody talks about trends. We're all a bit trend watchers, and we talk to a lot of people. You talk to a lot of people. But in your mind, what are the main trends in personalized print marketing today? And as a sub question, what do you think are the pitfalls to avoid?
Well, I would say the main trend that everybody's seeking at the moment is profit. Because that seems to be quite elusive in the industry, not least to which the disruption that's come from the president's small grasp of economics, tiny grasp of economics. Anyway, we'll leave that to one side. So I think that's made life really hard, because what tends to happen in any recessionary feeling, I don't mean a recession, I just mean the way that you think. You're either leaning back or leaning forward at any given point. If you are leaning back, you tend to go back to the thing that works. And that stops the evolutionary cycle from going forward because, well, it's safe back here. We know we can make money back here. So that stifles creativity in many ways and leads to new trends not appearing because they're too risky. So at the moment, I would say we're quite bereft, apart from the AI dolls, in terms of new product and new opportunity. I haven't seen anything, Jacques, this year that's made me sit up and go, wow, that's new.
No wow effect.
No wow effect, but I think we're in that awkward holding period between we want to do something, but it feels a bit dangerous at the moment and everything that's going on in the world and so on, which is why you're seeing attendance numbers lower at shows. People they're just holding back. What might come as the next trend is you'll see an awful lot of new things released at the same time. Because of that hold back, I don't know what they'll be. By the way, I'm not a visionary of the future, but I think, as I said earlier on, the one thing that most consumers desire is originality of their own product, their ability to co-brand, as I said before, with whether that's fashion, whether that's cars, whether the big trend about wrapping vehicles and what have you. Certainly in the commercial sector. We saw the Rap Masters last week in Berlin, got a huge audience, probably the biggest audience of the week, watching somebody wrap a car. And you think, well, that's nuts when you consider what is available in the rest of the show. So I think, ask me in a year, I think is my answer, because I think right now it's really difficult to predict what's coming next because it's really difficult to predict what's coming tomorrow.
So they're stepping on the brake, basically, what you're saying.
A little bit. I think they're just standing, not still, because you can't stand still, otherwise you're going backwards in real terms, but just doing what we do, and that's fine, quietly, making a little bit of money, and don't tell anybody, but we're okay, thank you. But you know this, you talk to enough people around the halls, that when you speak to people on a very macro level, they're all doing okay, but nobody's tearing trees up and doing fantastically. And it just feels like that era at the moment for just a little bit of quiet progress, which is a shame when you consider how much opportunity there is and technological opportunity there is and new market opportunity there is, because every year there's another bunch of consumers, and since time immemorial. So I'm sure I think print is back because I don't think it ever went anywhere. But I think right now it's almost waiting. You can almost ask, is the consumer dead? Ooh, discuss.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an interesting point, Richard, because, I have 52 2 years experience in print. I started very early, and I'm now 66. So I started with 14. And what I've learned is that in all those decades, print never was in danger. It's always the way we do business with print. And there I could make that observation that agencies were a strong driver for print, and in the 80s, last century, they kicked print off because the print experts were too expensive, but they earned a lot of money with that. Then they jumped into a big hole and they tried to be as profitable as with print. With digital, it never worked. So they do everything something else. I was thinking about what are the three main strengths of print and the way we can use print. And I thought about it's something like a cultural anchoring because it's part of our DNA. It's also the creative power. And the main point is the communicative excellence. Let's call it like that. Yeah. And this is so different from all other things. For sure, I love my iPhone, my iPad, but, after a couple of years, I throw it away. The good printed pieces I keep for my whole life. That's the difference. So
and this is,
what do you think?
Well,
Am I wrong?
Yeah, no, I agree. And, my dad always used to say to me back in the day, and I joined the wine business as a child as well, Andreas, so he lied. But he used to say there are two things here. There's the wine business, which is the nice thing that you go and visit vineyards and you taste the wine and you hear the stories and what have you, and that's the lovely storytelling side of it. And then there is the business of wine, and that's the commercial side of it, and that's the reality, and that's where you have to look at cost of goods and cost of production and so on and so forth. And the print industry has the same problem. There is the print industry and the industry of print, because but it doesn't see itself that way. It sees itself as one thing, which leads to the third problem, which is it doesn't communicate well enough because it doesn't really know which one it is. And then on any given day, the messaging doesn't quite land with the end consumer, if you like, because if they don't understand it, why would they spend their money? So I think those three things are quite critical. And if it was me and I could do it all again, I would take the print industry and divide it into those three sections. Do one thing beautifully, do one thing financially sensibly, and then talk about both of those things in isolation, because they're not the same thing. And in order for people to understand, you have to be very, very clear in your description and understanding of what it is that you're selling, making, designing, creating. And I think it's all ended up in the middle, and there's this one big stew, and it's like, and people say, so what's this stew made of? And you go, I don't know, lots of things, but it tastes good, and that's, so we've just got to be a bit clearer, I think. And I've said this for years now, and I'm very lucky, Jacques, that as you know, I stand on the sidelines and just shout and point basically at people and see, because I can see it. I can see what I'm looking at. It's a bit like being at a football game and everybody in the crowd is a referee, right? You can see what they're doing wrong, but they don't see themselves. And I think the industry would benefit from spending a little bit more time trying to work out the best way to describe itself. And it isn't one answer. And that's, so when you know it's not one answer, then you can look for three, and that makes it easier. And therefore, they're not having the conversation about price. They're having the conversation about value. Your point is absolutely spot on.
Perfect. Well, Richard, thank you very much for this talk. Your insights, always fantastic to be able to speak to you, to hear what you have to say, and what your thoughts are about our industry. So
thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It's nice to see you.
Fantastic, and hope to catch you soon somewhere around on the scene, as they say.
I look forward to it.
Alrighty, thank you, Richard.
Take care.
It was a great pleasure. So see you as soon as possible in person, not only on the screen.
Definitely, we'll do that.
Thank you, Richard. Bye bye.
Cheers, guys.